Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay
This
Moore.
is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Marotta.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
This is Chelsea, and you're watching the Break It Down Show.
And now, the Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Hey, Chelsea. Hey, Pete. It's good to be back with you guys. Wow, Chelsea, it's been a couple of years since we last spoke. We had you on the Popping the Bubbl, our podcast from a few years ago, and it was a really exciting conversation. And thank you, Pete, for inviting me back to come in and talk about all the latest developments that are happening in technology. And I was just excited to have Chelsea on because she is a futurist, she's got a crystal ball, and she can look into the future and tell us exactly what's going to happen, as she did 3 years ago when we had her on Popping the Bubbl, and we were talking about the future of work being decentralized. And look at us, here we are, all in different places. Chelsea, you're coming to us from Tbilisi. I don't want to missay it. Tbilisi, right? Is that how you say it?
Tbilisi, Georgia, yeah.
Tbilisi, Georgia. I know, Pete, you're in southern SoCal, right?
They're Georgia,
And
not ours.
I am,
That's right.
right.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
I'm in Tulum, Mexico now. So look at us being decentralized.
Wow, we're everywhere. No one's in who's in San Francisco anymore?
I don't know.
Who could afford to be?
There's still a few hangers on, but yeah, a lot of people have made the exodus to Miami. You chose a completely different place in another part of the world.
I chose ahead of that. I want to say I chose ahead of the pandemic.
You did. I chose during the pandemic. And there's a lot of people that are here, a lot of expats here in Tulum now as well. But yeah, Chelsea, catch us up. What's been going on with you in the last few years since we last talked?
Well, I live in Georgia, which is a completely different area of the world. It's situated between Europe and Asia. I still work with blockchain technology companies. My interest is still in bridging the sharing economy, or what's left, the remnants of the sharing economy, with the ideals and the ideology of blockchain technology and value distribution as a whole. I work with Instigation Protocol, a boutique consultancy that my business partner and I founded to help blockchain technology companies commercialize. So we work with all different types of companies all over the world. We've worked with maybe half a dozen companies in the last couple of years. It's been a lot of fun. Yeah.
Amazing. So you talked about the value exchange piece of your interest in blockchain. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, the early days of the sharing economy, and even actually, I should say, the latter days of the sharing economy really showed us, okay, what happens when we don't actually value the workers or the drivers' cars or their homes or their time the way that we value, say, the network and the connectivity. Because to me, in the future, the network is just everywhere. It just is. There's no name of the network. It's not called Facebook. You could touch something and you're somehow a part of it, right? And so what I see is that we need to distribute value where value is created when it's created. So say a driver is driving you in their car, instead of Uber taking 20, 30% of that, they say, okay, we are the network, or maybe there's no network at all, and there's just a value distributed network of drivers, right? So it's this idea of meeting needs with haves at the exact moment that they exist. And instead of going A to B, you go to A to F very easily and in real time. And if you can do that, there's something really meaningful that happens, which is there's no middleman, right?
Mm-hmm.
And blockchain technology is little more than a distributed ledger, but it gives the possibility for that to exist, or at least it gives the lens for the possibility for that to exist. And then, there's smart contracts and things built on top of that that give us the ability to sort of make some of these realities come to fruition.
And is this sort of, part of the whole evolution to Web 3.0, or is there?
Interestingly, I didn't realize this is what it was called until, it's going to sound silly, but maybe like a year ago, I was like, oh, the evolution of the sharing economy that I've been talking about for the last 5 years, actually Web 3.0 in a way. I'd say there's a couple of major tenets to Web 3, and one of them is decentralization, of course. And the other is sort of a bottom-up approach. So meaning that, things are open source, they come from the community, they're created together. There's no central unifying body that owns everything.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of other things, of course, but I would say those are the two major aspects. Otherwise, you start getting into lots of just little things that make it more complicated than it needs to be.
Yeah, I mean, when you talking like what you were talking about before, where there is not going to be any Facebook, we're just going to be. And so is that sort of the whole metaverse conversation? Will there be one metaverse that wins, or are they all going to blend together? What do you?
Well, let me return the question back to you. When you say metaverse, what do you mean?
I'm thinking about
VR?
Yes, VR.
Okay, so you mean VR world?
Yes.
It's tricky. It's tricky to imagine what VR is actually going to look like, because I've been using the Oculus Quest 2, and I've used the HTC and a couple of other things. But I think it's going to go beyond the headset and beyond what our wildest imagination is even now. And I swear to you, like, I have used the headset maybe 7 times, and I can't tell the difference between my dreams and VR and reality sometimes. And
Wow.
The brain, they've done studies, the brain can't actually tell the difference between your dream world and VR. So
is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I don't know. It sort of points to the simulation theory in a way. I don't want to get off topic, but yeah, I think the metaverse it's hard to understand what that actually looks like and what the worlds look like. I think when you start talking about network and marketplace of marketplaces, it's related to metaverse, but not everything points to metaverse. Metaverse is just like recreating realities within another reality, really, in my opinion.
What's the A to B in that? I mean, why do we need a alternate reality when we have one already that's that's here? Why do we need this metaverse, do you think? Is there a better? I don't know. I don't understand it.
I think maybe psychologically we need it to express like deeper parts of ourselves, and to be like, we could be whatever we want to be in that world, right? Like, say you're disabled, you're not disabled in the metaverse. And say, you're in a different part of the world that's more disadvantaged, you're exactly the same as everyone else in the metaverse, so it's a great equalizer, and maybe an opportunity to experience what it's like to be the other gender, or to compete in a different sort of way, or to expand upon the boundaries of what you think you are and are not. And so I think that's why it's the same reason maybe that we dream, to go beyond.
Yeah, it probably does expand our creativity and consciousness in some aspects. And I saw that Ricky is talking about advertising and marketing, and I think it's kind of interesting to see how brands have adopted or are adopting these new technologies, Web 3.0 technologies, and buying space in the metaverse, and buying agencies to create virtual sneakers and things like that. Where do you think that this is going, with brands and even corporations, even B2B? Like, what's the opportunity for them to either connect more with their audience, or sell more product? What do you think it's going with
I mean, Gary Vee likes to say that an NFT is like a receipt, right? Like, it's like you could take a physical object in the real world and attach it to a receipt, a proof of ownership, a certificate of whatever. And you could attach that to any kind of contract that you want, although very little is done with that with NFTs at the moment. Right now, they're mostly JPEGs, to be fair. But it's still a way of saying, this is mine. Here is the certificate. So like this art behind me, for example, is Reshka. He's a famous Georgian artist. And I have a certificate of ownership. That could be an NFT. If I owned a pair of sneakers in the metaverse, I could like transfer that NFT through a shopping cart in order to receive that actual pair of sneakers in the mail, let's say, right? Like designer shoes or something. So there's a way to play this back and forth, and to have both a virtual opportunity to experience something as well as the physical representation in the real world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And vice versa, really. Like you could be in the metaverse and buy something, right? And then
that's nothing new. Virtual goods have been around in gaming, for a long time, right? I mean, I think that was sort of like the precursor even to digital currencies, right? The trading of virtual goods in some of these games. But I've kind of, drank the whole NFT Kool-Aid as of recently. So I'd love to hear more of your thoughts on, what do you think about NFTs? What's exciting about it? What are the different applications you see for businesses, for people? What gets you excited about it?
I mean, I would say NFTs are something that you have to understand from the technology layer in order to understand what the possibilities are. So until you've looked at an NFT contract and sort of minted it outside of a centralized, decentralized network like OpenSea, I mean, of course you can do it that way. I think it's really hard to imagine and intuit what NFTs can be used for. Personally, I'm interested in NFTs for wine. I think that, anything that's a collectible, anything that has higher value, anything that, needs a story told along with it over a period of time is a really good use case for NFTs. So things like art, wine, collectibles, high-end luxury goods are the things that we're going to see first, I think, with NFTs. Mm-hmm. So on that note, I'm trying to start an NFT wine bar, like a small little one here in Georgia. Just to kind of play with that concept and to more fully explore. I think so for me, learning about NFTs included doing a Udemy course and just an online course to understand how to mint my own NFT, how to create it, how to sell it, etc., without using these centralized marketplaces. What is Dickie saying?
People using NFTs as a means to getting tangible goods. Is that unlockable content?
Yeah. Okay, so you're saying tickets, buying something, getting something, getting into something. Yeah, of course. Mm-hmm. It's definitely another use for NFTs. Mm-hmm. What are you excited about with NFTs? It sounds like you're doing some work with NFTs as well.
I am, yes. Well, I just think that it's really interesting as a fundraising mechanism, whether that's for startups or personal endeavors or even innovation teams, to be quite honest, because I think that on the corporate side, what I've seen a lot of these innovation teams being somewhat starved for funds, and I think if they can leverage some of the assets that they have that are historically interesting, it's a way to sort of self-fund innovation, or as well as self-funding startups and nonprofits. So I think all of that is really exciting. Plus, it's just a really interesting creative endeavor. It's just for me. I've been working on my own set of NFTs, and I'll be sharing more about that on a later show. But but yeah, I think just as a marketer and having more of a creativity, a bend towards creativity and always wanting to leverage that. It's been really fun to get into the artwork as well as the storytelling aspect of it. So I think that it's really the sky's the limit. I want to just NFT everything, honestly.
Well, when you say everything, what do you mean?
I mean, houses, just, all sorts of, different physical assets. I think just kind of be fun to just, see where things go. To your point, some really high value. That's.
I have a friend in Bansko in Bulgaria who has like 6 co-working spaces, maybe not quite that many, in a small ski village in the middle of nowhere. And there's a couple of nomads that live out there. He brought people into this abandoned ski village to live there and work there and, meet each other. And he built a tight-knit community there. And one of the things that he did most recently is he said, okay, I want to crowdfund for a cabin in the middle of the woods, because he bought some property in the middle of the woods and he made it into a crypto cabin. He called it crypto cabin. And so there's fractionalized ownership, sort of. I guess it's not quite ownership. It's access ownership. More like access, really, not ownership. For 1 week a year for 10 years. And then he sold that as an NFT. So, pretty cool.
And how did it go? Did he get sold out?
Yeah, he raised enough to build a cabin. I'm a proud. It's my first NFT.
Oh wow, awesome!
I have more since then, but yeah, very, very cool. A very cool idea. A very great way to like galvanize a group of people. I think it's hard to figure out fractionalized ownership and contracts associated with NFTs. So utilizing an access model or a membership model versus a ownership model actually works a lot better.
So I guess the obvious question a lot of the audience would want to say is we already have timeshares. And so how is this different or better than a timeshare? I mean, I get the idea of access and not ownership and everything like that, but why not just call it a timeshare? Why is it an NFT instead of something else?
I mean, it could be, right? Like we're recreating everything in the digital that we had, in real life, like e-commerce. We already had like a place to buy things. Right. But we like buying things on the internet. So I think NFTs just give us like easy access. And also you can't undervalue the fact that, people are buying and selling things with cryptocurrency, which is a different type of currency than fiat currency. It's decentralized. There's no central governing body. So it is a way to transact in a way that, sort of is not centralized, for lack of better words.
And with that idea of we've decentralized it, I guess that democratizes the ability to actually create your own timeshare in this case. So you can say, hey, I want to build this cabin, whatever it is, an A-frame out in the woods, super simple dirt floor. Here's a hearth,
exactly.
that kind of.
Exactly. It removes the sort of barrier of entry of needing everything to be legal according to a local jurisdiction, right? There is no local jurisdiction. You are the jurisdiction. The people are the jurisdiction. The network is the jurisdiction. So that changes quite a lot too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's really about like gathering your community and, empowering, enabling everybody to really take part in a project, that you spearhead. And finding those people that are like-minded like you, that want to spend a week in a cabin, in an A-frame cabin in the woods, or that maybe want to own a yacht together, or there's just I think a lot of different ways to use NFTs creatively. And then with unlockable content, you could even do something like, to your point, Pete, where you've got a house, a digital house that's an NFT. Then the unlockable content could be the actual house. And so the owner has the house, the actual physical house, but also has the value of the NFT, which they can resell.
Then there's royalties. There's lots of other layers to it as well.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, I mean, when you start talking about place and jurisdiction too, the subject comes to mind of, where to live, like in this whole decentralized world. I think everybody's trying to figure that out right now, right? Like, especially if, you're someone who holds crypto and you want to live in this like sort of alternate universe, like I think the places that win are the places that say, you know what, do what you want in this sort of future world, and we'll support that. And there's not a whole lot of places like that right now, but you're seeing that in Lisbon, you're seeing that to some degree in Georgia, although most people don't know that. You're seeing that in Puerto Rico. You're seeing that in quite a few different places, although Malta, I think, kind of switched off of that after a few ordeals. But yeah, I think
So
that's
in this case with this cabin in the woods, if it's owned by Hilton, right, and it's their timeshare, there's going to be amenities there and all that kind of thing. Maybe you don't need that. But what if someone comes there and either accidentally or on purpose just burns the damn thing down? Now you have this problem of who do we hold accountable? I mean, if I go
I think that's why in this model there is an owner, which is it's called a co-working Bansko, and it's an access model. It's not an ownership model. I think it becomes intensively complicated, getting tired, extremely complicated when you start talking about ownership models in real estate with a decentralized network. So there's this concept of decentralized autonomous organizations, or DAOs, which are meant to govern things like this. But governance models are still not figured out, like figuring out how to make group decisions and what kinds of decisions the group should actually make together. Should they buy insurance together? Should they decide what color the floor is? Things like that. Like the tools are being developed and some of them are coming from, Web 2 and other worlds, but DAOs are extremely complicated to run in the way that we want to run them, especially in the way that we want to, sort of future-proof this.
Are you involved in any DAOs? Like, I'd love to I'm still wrapping my head around the concept of a DAO, so maybe we can kind of talk about that a little bit more.
I mean, one of the first things that happened, the first sort of, you could call it ICOs, was a decentralized autonomous organization, which raised about $150 million to put into crypto projects. And this was like, I don't know, 5-7 years ago. I can't remember. And there was some sort of hack to the system and it had to fork and they lost a bunch of money. And then crypto went down for several more years before we had the first ICO boom. So that was like the first attempt, right? It was like, okay, let's create a group of investors that get to make investment decisions like as a group inside of this sort of electronic digital organization. Now there are all sorts of different types of things. I'm not directly involved in any DAOs at the moment. I'd like to be. We're taking on an advisory client that has a DAO governance platform. But really that's ultimately what's needed is the governance layer. How do you govern these things? And the client that we're working with is they have a governance tool that's used for sort of e-democracy uses in Canada and in many other like local jurisdictions. So it's used to make like really complex financial decisions as a group and things of that nature. And that's the type of tool that you need is a tool that shows you what everybody else is saying, what's happening, and what you've already said, and gives you feedback.
Are there voting mechanisms on these DAOs, or is it really everything you need to really, I guess what you're saying, future-proof by thinking of everything that's going to come up ahead of time and building it into the smart contract? Is that how that works? Or is there an ability
like I said, I'm not directly involved in any DAOs, so I don't know exactly how it's working at this very point in time. But no, the way that I would see it working is the organization that started the company creates a DAO. The DAO has limited decision-making power based on what the original company wants the group to make decisions on, and maybe the group being crypto owners usually, or token holders rather. And then, there's a little bit of play back and forth on like what decisions token holders own versus what the company wants people to make decisions on. but yeah, it's sort of fluid in nature by the very nature of it.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds really complex when you try to. I mean, like, I'm thinking of
It's
things that
super
are in the
complex.
regular, the regular world. We we get in significant legal fights over things like who's running the HOA, and what decisions are made. And so you have to have some kind of consensus model. And we know for sure, because humans are just crap at humanity, that the mob is often wrong, right? And so how do you have a consensus model where you are reliably making the best decision, and then does AI support that and try to say, hey, we've looked at these decisions historically, and it becomes, like, as you're saying, it becomes very hard to, again, humans are bad at humanity, so how do we reliably govern ourselves in this manner, without having some kind of overall
That's a good
board or
question. I
committee?
would say that we're not going to be governing like ourselves in terms of like for a long time in terms of like self-governance for government or anything
Right.
like that.
But even on
Um,
a small scale, like owning some cabins in the outskirts of Tbilisi or whatever it is, how do we reliably trust each other? And you
I
know,
think that in that case, I think it needs to be built into the contract. To Sandra's point,
right,
um, yeah, it needs to be built into the contract. So if you're buying something together, every little thing needs to be, as far as you can go, needs to be built into, you know, the autonomous contract.
so basically, this doesn't work a whole lot differently than the actual form of contracts. Like you need a lawyer to sign a contract because it's super thick, and you go through and you're protected both sides in the thing. It's just
Yeah, but
reviewing the
with a
contract.
contract, you have one centralized organization, another centralized organization.
Right,
You both have lawyers, and you have like, and then if there's a dispute, then there's like a whole
right,
other layer,
right.
right? So there's branches upon branches.
Yeah,
Um, whereas in this world, there's just you and them and the contract. That's it. There's no need for anything else. There's no banks. There's no lawyers. Um, yeah, I don't know how that plays out in all
yeah.
reality. Yeah, I don't have a good answer for that. I think that there's a lot of people that are diehard on blockchain and technology that will tell you, look, it's like all trustless and permissionless, and it's great, and it's decentralized, la la la, and we don't need humans anymore. And I disagree. Like,
Yeah.
like we still need like maybe some kind of other layer, and maybe we have yet to see what that looks like yet.
And to be fair, like, we've gotten to this point with contracts and everything else where you can govern fairly stably on a large scale or a small scale through having a conversation. Now we're just having a conversation in front of those conversations on how to do this with an NFT or a DAO or whatever it's going to be. It's the same conversation. It's just the next evolution of it. At least that's how it
Yeah,
seems
it's kind of nice though, because like, this is one thing that technologists do say is like code doesn't lie, right? You
right.
read the code and you agree to the code, like we are the code. Versus like a lot of law has like various interpretations, things like that. So like it's sort of more like yes, no boxes. This is this goes over here, until you get into like the DAO stuff. It's more straightforward. Although I still think the real estate thing is really complicated. There's some people that have figured pieces of it and parts of it out, and it's starting to work. And when that does work, I think that's going to be huge, 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 globally. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it also, with regards to the smart contract, I know you did, some work in the world of ethics and blockchain, and it's really about, putting that ethical hat on as you're building these smart contracts, and making sure that you've got the code in alignment with the ethics. And I think that still starts at the centralized layer, right, before it goes extends out to a decentralized.
I mean, that starts with the human
organization.
layer. That starts with
Right.
Diversity and making sure that we have all stakeholders at the table, which we currently do not. Technologists are not representative of humanity, and that is a problem, right? So we are literally programming the code of law and of ethics for the future. And that is a huge problem. Like, and what I realize is it's not about a blockchain code of ethics. It's, I mean, maybe I always realize this, but it's about a technology code of ethics. It's not about AI. It's not about anything else. It's about, or robotics. I mean, of course we need to think about those things, but as a whole, technology is programming our values. And if we are not each a part of that conversation, that is a huge problem. So I think it would be smart to create a DAO around ethics, really, and create a system by which maybe people buy in, earn their way in. I'm not sure what, but even that gets into issues, right? Because then you've got like financial stuff, and then you've got the technologists and the crypto people making decisions versus it being more representative globally. And
kind of also sounds like the whole like social credit system a bit.
Well, it is. It is. It's exactly that conversation, and it's every other conversation that's around technology. When you have the ability to say yes, no, let's program this in to say yes, no, whatever it is, you're creating on-off switches and on-ramps and off-ramps into things that have future implications. And if you're not thinking about that, it's, man, we're not going the right direction with that right now. I'll tell you that.
Ethics are really hard because you have to be able to draw. So there's a concept that I've developed. I've not authored any paper on it yet, but I want to at some point here in the near future. Is ethical saturation, where your intention to always do the right thing overfills your ethical jar, and then ethics flip. So your intention to like this choice, yes, no, okay, yes, this choice, yes, no, no, and then you go up the chain, and all of a sudden you realize you've made this horrible stew of things that are going in the opposite way. You also have to, with ethics, you have to, how do you wash out ideology, right? Like you can be a yes, I can be a no. I mean, abortion is a good example where you can't get parties to agree and they both stand on the bedrock of ethics and say, well, this is why this has to be this way, right? And so you have to,
or religion, yeah.
Right. Yeah, and there's a lot of different examples. Abortion is just an obvious one that like drives our entire political structure here in the US, right? So how do you work ethics? When it's simple, but again, humans are bad at humanity and what's ethical. Here's a good ethics.
I mean, I think there's some things we can agree on, like don't kill each other and don't like don't set up systems that like disadvantage certain groups, and don't create machines that destroy us. Like the whole AI conversation, I think that they've gotten further with ethics and technology as a whole because there's more fear around that. But I think that sort of some of the micro decisions are going to create so many fallout effects for so many different types of people, especially when we're creating economies. We're creating economies and governments online. We're recreating everything, governments, banks, legal, everything. Like I said, like taking out all of this stuff and putting humans at the center of the equation is good on one hand. On the other, it's scary.
Yeah. It is scary because again, humans,
especially when you look at like who majorly like owns crypto. It's young dudes,
Yeah. This is just a question that I know the audience is always curious about. I have a lot of friends. I followed some good advice on crypto, and I just started buying a little bit of it, but constantly. And I've got quite a bit of crypto now. Nothing crazy, not even $100,000, right? But there's a lot of money there. But a lot of my friends are like, "You're crazy. It's going to all disappear. It's like Betamax or whatever." I hear all these examples. What would be your response overall to where we're going with? And I'll just say the word crypto. I know that's not enough to gather the whole thing, but when people are like, "Bitcoin's a fad. It's going to go away." What would you have to counsel them on with that?
People said the internet was going to go away.
And rock and roll.
People were like, email is dead. Yeah, I'll never forget the first time I heard someone talk about email in a gas station. When I was young, I heard two people explaining, like this like older gentleman with this other older gentleman explaining about email, and then I remember like a year and a half or two later, like people were like, yeah, that internet thing, it's like dying, you know? It was after like the dot-com like bust and a few other things. There were a few times where people said the internet was like just like a distraction, basically.
Right.
That's one thing. And another is I think it's worth the risk. I think it's worth the risk to create an environment that's more free and that distributes wealth in a more meaningful way, and that, you know, allows us to create value where value is created, and put our values where our money is, and for that not to be tied to our jurisdiction. I think that I think that there's a lot of value in putting money in place and in community, but I think maybe there's better ways to do that than we've seen more recently. So by the way, I'm not anti-government, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think
With that, we're talking about complex things, but when you think about a simple government function like dog tags, and if you penalize the person X times two for not getting a dog tag on time, now they're disinclined to participate in that part of the government because you've penalized them for participating. And so we can eliminate some of these punitive things and maybe even find more carrots instead of sticks to get people to participate in a way that's
yeah,
meaningful.
positive like reinforcement incentives. You know, just giving, like I said, putting value where value is created. I can't stress that enough. It sounds like sort of like a trite thing or like an economic thing, but it's actually like it's so beautiful when you think about it. Like when you think about actually doing that, when you compensate people for recycling or for coming up with like good decisions, or I mean, you get into trouble when you start talking meritocracy too, but there's just so many ways that we can reroute and rethink the economy, especially when you start talking about, this is one thing I became passionate about a couple of years ago, supply chains. And you start thinking about like, okay, where does I don't have an iPhone anymore, but like where do all the little bits of my iPhone come from, and how are the people compensated along the value chain, and how much does it cost to ship it, and how much does that cost the environment, and how much does that cost the families? And you start to actually put value on each of these things, and then you're like, okay, my $900 phone actually costs $10,000. Is that worth it? Yes or no? You know, and we can start making more meaningful decisions, and then maybe we buy different clothes or different products, or you probably don't want to know. Yeah, you probably don't, which is why we don't, which is why we turn the other way, right?
Right. Yeah.
But when you do know, I think it changes the decision, and it changes how we treat people, because it becomes exposed, it becomes transparent.
That's a great point. I think about like the California water wars and our inability to get along good enough to solve a problem. And then one of the answers is just like, we'll make it illegal to grow almonds in the Central Valley because they take a lot of water. But people still want to buy almonds. So that means that somewhere with less advantage is going to grow almonds as a means of getting out somewhere, and you're going to suck their water table dry as well. So like there still is this problem of it costs a certain amount to grow, in this case, almonds or alfalfa, or whatever crop it is. And you can't, there's trade-offs, right? And we're really bad at measuring the trade-offs. The Sierra Club does great work in protecting the little guy, protecting the environment, but it's bad at allowing dams to be built. And so you have like all of these things where like you're good at this thing, you're bad at that thing. And I'm not saying anything bad about the Sierra Club. I'm just, they're part of this whole water war thing, right? The farmers have vested interest. There's people that invest in farm. Oh my God, it goes on forever, right? And so you have this complex problem that goes beyond the government. And, we're really struggling to do that. Software might be able to help us exchange that value in a way that makes it more appropriate, I guess.
Yeah, one of the words that I really loved in my sharing economy days, and that applies to this conversation right now, is interdependence. Like, how do you prove interdependence? Like, how do you create an economy around showing something that's completely obvious, but that we're not connecting the dots within in the way that our economic system works? We're not saying, okay, like how much does it cost for someone to be healthy versus like treat them in a hospital when they're almost dying, right? like we're not creating systems by which we're treating it like holistically, and that goes across the economy, at least in the United States.
I've been asking all the questions, Sandra. Sorry.
No. It's totally
We're all
fine.
into it.
Yeah.
Very.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what are some of the things that are exciting you right now beyond wine NFTs?
I mean, that's pretty exciting.
It's very exciting.
I like the idea of, you know, putting a QR code sort of like NFT, like maybe a design of some sort that operates in the same sort of fashion on wine bottles to tell the story of the wine, where you own the wine bottle and then it becomes a collector's item and you own that representation as well as an NFT. And then maybe actually you could own the actual, like, a 3D rendering of the bottle that you could put in your, you know, your home in the metaverse, you know. So there's all
I
different
like
ways
having
to
the
do it.
3D rendering, because then that means you can still drink the bottle of wine and still have the
Get
asset.
it
You could also create an NFT for your NFT where you could have near field technology, and when you get close to the bottle of wine, the album from the event pops up, or the video, or whatever it is. The memory could be attached to the NFT with NFT.
worlds within worlds within worlds. What do you guys think about, like, I'm curious, like, how you see the metaverse, like, looking and working, and what type of, like, equipment you see as using or lack thereof in the next 10 or 20 years. Like, I can only begin to imagine it, so it might be fun to hear what you think.
I mean, I actually haven't spent very much time in the metaverse. I've maybe been there once. For not that long, but I do understand that it is, you know, this really cool way to explore new worlds and have new experiences. And I do think that the metaverse land grab is very interesting, that you're selling these plots of land for, you know, so much, you know, money. I think like Snoop Dogg, like somebody spent millions of dollars to get a plot of land next to Snoop Dogg's plot of land in the metaverse. So I think it's all very interesting. I think it's just sort of, I think what I like about it from a brand point of view is that it's a new way to experience the brand, right? So like, you know, if Coca-Cola has their bubble jacket, like you don't necessarily have, like, you know, a futuristic, you know, piece of clothing that Coca-Cola has developed that you can, you know, put on, but you can, you know, if you've purchased that item in the metaverse. Or yeah, I mean, I think there's just still so much to be explored there, and I think we're going to be really surprised by what brands are doing. And I think I really would like to see what, you know, I'm kind of okay. I'm kind of gonna show my nerdiness, but I'm excited about what B2B companies are going to do, like large corporates like a Cisco and Intel. Like, how are they going to play in the metaverse? You know, when it's not like a strict
Infrastructure,
consumer brand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Showing their technology in new ways. You know, having their buyers be able to, you know, walk around, you know, a giant, you know, 3D metal printer and, you know, experience how that works in the metaverse, and maybe creating objects for their homes or something like that. I'm not sure.
Cool idea.
Mm-hmm.
A 3D printer in the metaverse. Oh.
Nerdy.
So you ladies probably don't know this, but I think this is kind of my answer on the metaverse is there's no way you could know this. So there's a 3-dimensional wire cube hovering above Malibu. I've seen it. I've flown through it in an airplane, an actual physical airplane. And so this is kind of how I see the metaverse. Like you have this this subverse within the metaverse where you have pilots using this web cube that's hovering in the sky, and it's virtual. It's not really there, but yet there it is. I flew through it.
You saw it?
Yeah. It's
visible.
It's hang on, I'll explain. So there's a
I'm like, what?
there's a startup company started by some really high-end fighter pilots, and they're like, hey, it's better to do a simulator in an actual airplane. And so we're going to simulate actions in the space that you would actually do it, like refueling, flying in formation, all of these things that you have to master. But we're going to do it with the visor. So you're flying and you can see everything in front of you, but you also can see this augmented reality, right? And so you fly through this wire cube as it was like a test measure, like, can you do this? And so you have, and this is like its own little miniverse, right? And so you can bubble these things together. So like, let's say, for example, you have a bunch of, one of my friends has ALS, so I'm really into that right now. You could have a bunch of ALS patients who are interacting. And if you want to, if you're a startup or if your established company wants to do something, and you're like, hey, we think we have a use case for our product. Let's go over to the ALS metaverse. Let's go visit their corner of the neighborhood. Something in between has to negotiate that. Maybe it's Cisco, maybe it's somebody else. But the ability to look at these smaller, like, okay, Facebook is going to have their thing, but at some point, everybody's going to have their own little metaverse type thing, and you've got to be able to travel through them. So I see there being a financially driven use case where you're able to transmit people from one corner of the metaverse to the other. If that makes any sense at all. But yeah, like these guys flying airplanes around all of it.
I really hope someone creates an open source metaverse that everybody has to build on, because it's where everybody is. I really that's what I'm hoping for. Because
But what will happen to the metaverses that exist already?
I mean, they'll have to like rebuild, or I don't know. Like there's not that much.
Or have some kind. I mean, is interoperability a thing with metaverses?
Yeah, maybe that's a good point. Maybe it's just interoperability and being able to move between verses.
Yeah, doing the tele
like little portals.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Oh yeah, XD. He's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I don't want to keep you all night. I know you've been up late, and Tbilisi's a long way from here. I'm going to ask you a question about living there. Yeah, you live in Eurasia.
Please ask me whatever you want.
People always call white people Caucasian. Like, well, there you are. You're living in the Caucasus region for the most part. I'm living
in the Caucasus, yeah.
Yeah. So, what is that like for all of us who don't live in the Caucasus Eurasian?
So, I got here, and it was during it was the last week before things got shut down in the pandemic, and it was very weird. I got here at night, and I looked around, and I was like, man, this place looks like it was blown up. That was like my fear, that it was going to all be blown up. And as I started to see more of the city and the old town and the more innovative building structures and architecture, and go to the restaurants, and I love it. It's amazing. It's maybe like 1/3 to 1/5 of what the costs are in San Francisco. People have time. They have space here. People are able to be creative. The thing about San Francisco that I think it's really hard in expensive places is that when you think about, I want to start a community center, like I want to start a meditation center, I want to paint on walls, or I want to do something creative. When there's not space to do that, and when it's cost prohibitive to do that for any reason or any use case, it inhibits creativity and community, and everything that's creativity or community centric has to be monetized. And I think that's a huge problem. I think that there's an intersection between passion and business that's not quite business, and it's not quite community. It's like something different, and that's maybe part of what we're seeing in blockchain world. But yeah, I think when people have time and space, they treat each other differently. They spend more time. And I would say that's the big thing. That's the big difference that I notice here.
I think what you're talking about is was it called Ikigai, or I'm sure I'm butchering it, but it's the Japanese.
Igaki or whatever it's called.
Yes.
The center between your passion, your skill, and that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, right. And then I guess people when you have a lower cost of living, just gives you more time and I guess less stress, and you can pursue those other things that really fuel your passions, right?
Yeah, it's the economics of time and space, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
When you don't need to be spending all your time commercializing it, you have time to sit down and have a 3-hour meal, and have a deep conversation, just because.
And so, are you having a lot more of those there?
Good point. I work a lot. I work in the blockchain world. I hope to have more time in the new year, but yeah, I mean, I work a lot, to be fair. But yeah, I still feel the emotional and the mental health effects of being in a place where people have time and space for people. I mean, I had like a million friends in San Francisco, and I had to book my friends like two weeks in advance, other than like a couple of people, you know? So it's just everyone's so busy. It's a different lifestyle here. Yeah, it's great. This is a great place. And if you want to start a business, it's like 1 hour online. You fill out a form. Georgia's one of the best places in the world to start a business, and get certified to start a business. It's very easy to set up a bank account. Like, things are just, some of the things that are difficult other places are very, very easy here. But I don't want San Francisco coming here, so don't you all come.
We can come visit, right?
Oh, no, I'm kidding. I'm over that. When I first got here, I was like, please don't I'm not going to tell people. No, please come here. It's amazing. Yeah. Just don't
any words, Sandra?
I'm sorry?
What's up?
Any final words for you, Sandra? Anything you want to say?
My final words are thank you, Pete, for all you do. You're amazing, and you've given so many people a platform to talk about what they're doing, and it's not easy what you do. I know that. It takes a lot of time, and I just want to say I'm grateful for you.
Oh,
and I'm also grateful for Chelsea for coming on and chatting with us again. It's been really fun.
Great yellow, too. Great color, Pete.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, yellow, and it goes with my sunshine that's going to come through my tent here as the morning grows. Chelsea, what about you? What do you want to say in closing?
Oh, I didn't know you were going to ask me that. This is unrelated to anything we've talked about, but I'm really grateful. I just bought an apartment here in Tbilisi. And I would say it's a small little like loft, like tiny house, like apartment. But I would like to say, I guess, in relation to that I think now is a really good time to get invested in crypto and to start investigating. And even though it's extremely intimidating to start, just start. You're always going to have more questions than answers. And I think especially women, more women need to get involved and ask your friends, ask around, Google everything that you want to know, and just figure it out. Don't get stuck. I think that's what happens for a lot of people, is they get stuck or they get fearful. Throw $100 on Bitcoin if that's all you have. Just get started.
Yeah.
Echoed. Yeah, just go do it. It's so early. You can make 1,000 mistakes.
It's still early, everyone. Still early.
Yeah. and you make 1,000 mistakes and you'll still end up with more money now than 20 years from now. That's how wealth works.
Yeah, I mean, some people are saying Bitcoin is going to go to like 1 million or 2 million in the long run. So,
right.
One Bitcoin. Yeah.
Let's hope so.
45,000 right now.
Yeah. All right, stand by. Let me wrap this thing.